Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 358, featuring Raf Grassetti, art director at the Santa Monica studios of Sony. Raf is just an absolutely incredible artist that I have met through our mutual good friend, Ian Spriggs. We met at THU and I've been following his work. And he's done some absolutely fascinating things in terms of his art, but also he has been doing really smart things in terms of art, in terms of the NFT market. And we'd get deep conversation about that, which gets very, very interesting. So Kristen, what did you think of Raf and the amazing stuff that he's done?
Yeah, well, like you said, amazing artist. And you talked about just kind of how he has his own unique spin on his creations that kind of sets him apart. And he also talks about how he's grown his Instagram during the pandemic from, I think it was like 100,000 to 700K, which is just insane. And just you guys talk about kind of how he's adapted to the work from home status, which instead of commuting has given him that extra time to create more art. And like you guys talk about the NFTs. And he's also worked with Sotheby's and Christie's to sell some of his art, which is insane. But he talks about like just the collectors now of his work. And you guys also get into the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which you explain, which is Discord, and that he also has his own club that he has created on Discord. So you guys talk a lot of stuff.
Yeah. The Bored Ape Yacht Club is actually is our NFTs, but they have their own Discord. And I'm talking about, a lot of people think that the Bored Ape Yacht Club is just a bunch of JPEGs, but it's actually a whole community that's on Discord. And what I think is amazing is that Raf did the exact same thing with his community. He's created a community of people that collect his art through his own Discord, and they've become their own thing. So it is just kind of an amazing thing. And we talk a lot about Web3. He is totally the Web3 artist out there, which is really kind of a really cool thing. And he also states some very important things. He's not actually trying to sell you on this is the future of art, on what he's trying to do. He's just basically someone who's very smart and thinks about it. He is also very smart about how, besides being a good artist, he's very good about how he markets his art and how he does that. Like you said, he took his community, his followers from 100,000 to 700,000, which is, sevenfold growth in 1 year. It's pretty amazing in a lot of ways. So really great to have Raf on. I was very excited. I've been wanting to talk to him for a while. I think it was great to have almost a whole year of this NFT trend in the art world happen before I sort of found out, how things are going. So awesome to have him on. Now, we don't necessarily have any events, but we do have some big news, don't we, Kristen?
Yes, we do.
So the big news is, as some of you may know, there's been a press release that came out last week. But pretty much the news is that Chaos and Enscape have merged as a company. We're now a much bigger and more interesting company. We are basically creating a huge, comprehensive end-to-end 3D visualization ecosystem as with these two companies, and it's kind of a big deal. Now, what does that imply for everything? Well, there's a lot to read into it. All of this is still, in the works, as they say. But for now, definitely for now, nothing has changed with our products. None of these products are going away. In fact, our products are going to be growing even more with the idea of this merger. So super exciting to see that, and very happy that Chaos is part of this new future. So and we, Kristen and I, are working very hard to get you a podcast where we're going to be able to answer much more of these questions for you. But if you do have questions about the merger, and you'd like to ask those questions so that I can put them on the podcast, I'll go ahead and let us know as soon as possible. So we'll try to get those questions answered to you. And for that, if people want to ask those questions or get in touch with us for the podcast, Kristen, where can they go?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you just want to email us directly with some questions about this podcast, other podcasts, or anything about, you want to know about the merger, just go ahead and email us, labs@chaosgroup.com, and we will make sure to get as much of your suggestions out there as possible. And of course, don't forget to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcast, and share this with all of your friends and family. But for now, please enjoy episode number 358 with Raf Grassetti.
Welcome to another CG Garage. where the chaos group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passe. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
How you been?
Sounds good. I've been good.
Yeah?
Very good.
Yeah.
Just keeping busy. How you been?
It's just a crazy, interesting, fascinating world we're living in, which I actually have a lot of questions to you about.
That's for sure.
I'm excited to ask. But before we get into some of the stuff that you're doing that's really kind of cutting edge in terms of where CG is going, I'm talking economically speaking as well.
Right.
I'm also interested in some of your past. So the last time I met was actually I was introduced to you by Ian Spriggs in Malta, right? That was I think the first time we met, right?
Yeah. How long ago was that? Maybe 4 years?
4 years. This goes by so quickly now. Yeah. It was probably 4 years ago, yeah, which was a lot of fun. And I've obviously been following your work quite a bit, so I'm excited to have you on. But tell me a little bit about your past, like where how did you start getting into CG, and what got you interested in sculpture, and what sort of got you to where you are now?
Let's see. Well, I'm from Brazil. I grew up in Brazil.
Oh, nice.
Did the whole thing, like, self-taught somewhat, did some courses. When I first got interested in 3D, it was like back in the days when, there were like flash animations. This is like, at this point, 17 years ago, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But I got, thankfully I was introduced to a job in the industry very early when ZBrush was still not even around. I was just doing animation, more a generalist type of guy, and then got introduced into advertising, work in advertising. And that was really my school. Then when ZBrush came out, that's when I kind of pivot into the digital sculpting, the modeling side of things, and just from there I was just learning from tutorials. I think CG Society was pretty big back then. So it was just from there I was just started working with character, more focused on character sculpting, and then ZBrush just snowballed into this career. I started making toys for toy companies, and slowly just moved into full-time character artist. That's when games got into my life, and I've always wanted to move out. So I got some opportunities to come work in the US, in Canada. This is like 11 years ago, and I ended up moving to Canada.
Okay.
So like long story short, that's kind of how it happened. But it was a natural transition for me. And it kind of made sense to go into games because the industry was growing. And then since then, I've been working with video games for BioWare, and now I'm at Sony. I've been at Sony for past nine years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by obviously your stuff you've done in video games, and it's well renowned for some of the work you did. But was there something specifically about sculpting? I know ZBrush is like probably something that's sort of like bing, like once you start using ZBrush, you get good at it, you want to be a sculptor. But was there something about sculpture that made it interesting to you in some ways?
I think, yeah, I've always been interested in clay. I think everybody who kind of start learning art in general, you go to like drawing and you start copying stuff, you start looking at comic books and all, you make that transition. And for me, having access to clay from early on, it was something I've always resonated with. But the digital, the modeling poly by poly side of things weren't as fun back then.
Right.
You remember you start.
Yeah, I do.
to do a head, it's like it takes forever. You go like you build from a certain. There's different ways to do it, but
right.
It was very very just a lot of work. But so when ZBrush got introduced, it all kind of made sense and it clicked. And I've always I think I had more maybe it was easier for me than drawing because I've never been really good at drawing, and I think the sculpting side of things it made sense to me. So the digital and ZBrush, it started to make it more accessible. It just made sense. And I was doing some classes back then. I've studied with Cicero Davila and Alex Oliver, and all these guys are masters in digital clay and marble. And I've learned the traditional side of things as well as ZBrush was getting their tools up to speed. And once ZBrush was, made it, especially when Datamesh came around, and it's just like now you have no limitations, and it's just skill. And for me, I've never went back after that. I mean, I was already doing it, but I just kind of went heads down into like just being good at digital sculpting and not worrying so much about tools, which, in the game side is almost the opposite. You just have to be good at the tools and making the game. So it's always been like this balance of keeping up to speed with technology and then keeping up to speed with art. And there's a lot of people, especially people who, yourself included, like how much we have to learn. It just never ends.
It's a lot. Every day. Yeah, all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's fascinating, but there is a certain amount of skill that you mentioned these things, right? There's a certain amount of skill, like learning the tool, that became important. And then as you just said, it's like once Datamesh kind of involved in ZBrush, then you just have to be a really good artist,
right?
And focus on that. So what inspired you as an artist? Besides, obviously, what inspired you to do the kind of thing? Because obviously you have a style of art that is founded in some kind of art history or some kind of reference of art history in some ways that has given you the style that you have. So what sort of inspired you in that way?
It's funny you mentioned that, because to me it's always been the challenge of doing something. It's never been like, I resonate so much with like classical or I resonate so much with like movies that I want to just do that with my life. It's always been like the challenge of achieving something. So if I watch a movie or if I read a comic book, it's always the challenge to me is like, can I do that? So I've always pursued that achievement in a way. So and that just helped me grow and study. So that's why I've been all over the place, just trying different things. And it's always been more about the challenge of being able to do something and feeling like I've accomplished, and feeling that I failed as well, because that kind of keeps you in your place, right? If you try something new and you realize that you don't know how to do it, and something that you thought you'd be able to do it, you're not ready for it. And that to me just motivates me to just keep going until I get somewhere. And then when I do it, I'll just move to something else. So it's always been that challenge, and I think that's what kept me inspired through all these years. So, to your question, I don't think I've never been specifically about a style, and I think I found my style, if you could say that, throughout the years of trying different things. From going to more animated, style to then a more realistic, and then finding what I like, what I resonate with. Like I like a lot of colors, and I think my work, usually the stuff that I put up on the wall or kind of keep it with me throughout the years, is something, it's stuff that pops and I can kind of be happy with the end result. But it's never been like I'll do this for the rest of my life. It's always been having fun and creating.
Yeah, what I find very interesting about your work is that, I go on the internet, right? And I look at a lot of stuff, especially any stuff that involves digital humans. I have a passion for some of that. Mm-hmm. But the minute I see your work, I can immediately identify it as your work. And it's because you have, there's a certain way that the faces look mm-hmm. and the expressions that they have. There's an expression that you emote through your sculptures that no one else does except for you. Is that something that, do you know that, or is it do you realize that a little bit?
Well, first of all, thank you. I think that means a lot, especially, even if it's subconsciously. I think it's good to hear that. And I had conversations with people where they would say stuff like that, where, I had a friend that's like, the lead animator at Sony, when he comment on things, and I've always picked his brain on like, why do you like it? That kind of stuff. And,
mm-hmm.
he talked about like something with the eyes, or like they don't know how to explain it, but you just relate to it. But I've always been interested about the human psychology of like, why do you like it? And I think that speaks a lot about social media in general as well, of like if you're doing a work that you wanted to, it's not just social media, but like, if you make a production like a game, and you need to at least understand why people resonate with something, where to focus on, what's important for the image, right? If it's like you said, the digital portraits, it's like it's amazing, but it's not for everyone, right? And it's finding the successful cases with that as well, and why does it work? Why, what can I bring that to my own piece? So finding those things is interesting, but I don't think a lot of the stuff that I do is successful that way, but I'm always trying to search for what to carry over to the next thing, if there's something that works.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I've noticed, I've obviously like I said, I've been following your work, and I've been following Ian's work too, and I've seen some of that evolution that Ian's has had in his own work over time.
Yep.
And I think it's really interesting to see that through people like yourselves, right? Because I think a lot of times you see a lot of people out there learning how to do digital humans and are like, is this good? Is this good? Is this good? But I think that you guys have sort of achieved a certain different level, but now you guys are trying to find the next level that's much more personal, much more about you as an artist, and that I think is no longer trying to beat down that door of, did I get out of the uncanny valley or whatever else that is? You know what I mean? And so it's really kind of fascinating to see that evolution of style through what you guys are doing.
Yeah. It's funny too, you mentioned, sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead,
talking
please.
about Ian, because I've always learned so much, but talking with him about his work, because I know even though he is looking for the digital portrait, like the realism, that stuff is there. And then the more the years go by, the more people will be able to do it, right? Because the tools become more accessible, and there's some presets and things you can pull from. But the attention to detail, and even talking about the reason why he would do certain things, and it's even when talking, it's eye opening, because you start to understand the care that he has about with first of all the subject, where he's pulling his references from. Like he's always using something that people kind of relate to, because he used old paintings and replicate certain feelings, right? And that, to your point, is what makes it what it is, right? Like he has certain things where it's very rare you find someone that can do it as good as he can, because he's been doing it for so long, but also he is searching for that next thing. What is the human connection? Why are people going to relate to this? Maybe there's he's seen it, the painting or the reference somewhere, but even if you don't make that connection, it is on your mind, and
your subconscious.
You appreciate it for what it is. So I have major respect for what he does.
I do too, but I certainly don't want to take away from the respect I have for your work, because I'm fascinated by this, and I'm going to sort of get to some of the things that are inspiring in a lot of ways. But before I do that, I want to get a little bit more history behind you, and talk a little bit about Sony and what you've been doing at Sony and some of the projects you worked on. So can you tell people a little bit about some of those projects and what are some of the things you've worked on over the years over there?
Yeah, definitely. I was very fortunate. Like when I moved to EA, I moved to Canada, and I worked at BioWare for a year, and I was as a senior character artist, and I was pretty much making assets and having fun. Like it's just, I miss those days where it was life was simple, but then I had the opportunity to move to Sony, and I work as a supervisor, and it was at VSG, which is the visual services group for Sony, and I had the opportunity to touch on a lot of different things, because as a service group, you work on different projects. It's not kind of like an outsourcing house, but for Sony, so it's a lot more family. So I worked on many different projects, and I saw a lot of different pipelines. So I was very fortunate to do that.
Sure.
And then I was I had an offer to come to Santa Monica, which is still within the Sony family, and I got transferred to work as a senior character artist there. And then I've been with Santa Monica for all these 8-9 years now, working primarily on the God of War franchise, So it was an amazing project. I was very happy to work from the ground up and kind of reinvent the franchise with Corey and the rest of the team. So it's been, my favorite project by far that I had a chance to work on. And, I was very successful, and I'm art directing for Sony for the next one.
Okay.
So it's been more of that transition into, the art direction role. I was doing some of that, towards the end of the last project, but now it's been full-time art directing and, building the team and executing on projects, scope side of things. In that transition, it's less art, more about working with the team and
right,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you always had a passion for games? Is that one of the things you've always been excited about?
Yeah, most definitely. Growing up, I think I've been in that generation from the PlayStation transitions and playing the games and having memories. I still do, and now I do it more for research than anything, but I still play a lot of the games that comes out for sure.
Do you feel that working in games kind of makes playing games harder to enjoy?
Yeah. Well, I think to be honest, like making art in general makes game less enjoyable, just because at least for me, I've always been like, if I play something or if I watch something, I need to either do a sketch or create something just because I'm inspired, and then that cycle just never ends. Like I was just watching last season of Boba Fett, and I'm like, I have so much stuff to do, but I'm like, I'm just gonna do something because I'm inspired. So I try not to get too deep into like a lot of things, because it could be detrimental for the day to day.
Yeah. So how much, if you're talking about your day to day, you're very prolific as an artist as well, and you obviously have to do your day jobs. Like how much time do you allow yourself to be able to do some of your personal work during the week or whatever?
Well, I've always been a very kind of schedule type of person, and I've always kind of schedule myself and being very strict to time in general. And after I had kids, it just went to the next level of scrutiny with every single hour. So I've tried to schedule myself very well, especially for personal projects. So I've tried to, like, usually in the mornings it's more with family and the kids that I kind of catch up with emails before I start at Sony, which is around like 8:30, 9, and then 9:30 depending on how busy we are. And then, throughout the days is full time with Sony until 6:30, 7, and then it's family time again. And then from like 9 to like 1 midnight 1, it's just either I am catching up with emails on the personal side of things, or I'm just creating stuff. But it's more of dedicated time, so I try to at least do like kind of 3 hours a day of just personal stuff.
That's pretty awesome. Has the working from home helped that?
Yeah, just because of the commute. Like I used to spend at least an hour back and forth in commuting, and it's just not just the time in the car. It's also like when you get to the studio, you're like either talking to people or just doing a lot more of the social things, and that at least half an hour to an hour you get. So I got a couple hours back in my day if you look at it. So I'm able to either go to the gym or watch something. It's been good. It's been, well, to be honest, it's been bad at first because I missed the day to day, and I've went into games because I like to work with people, and it definitely took a hit in terms of production and working, being a part of the team, and you see that reflect on the team members as well. People are not as attached anymore to a project, and you start seeing those things, especially as the years go by, like you start realizing that those things do make an impact. So on that side, it's not great, but I think quality of life, I think it did improve for sure.
That's great. That's great. They're I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like at the 2 hours of my day was in traffic. And so I feel like I've regained a lot, and I can sort of do some interesting things on the side here and there. So I'm excited about that.
Where do you live?
I live in Burbank, so Burbank to Culver City. That's a long drive every day.
Yeah, I think we're close because I was in Lake Balboa, just kind of close. In driving down to Playa Vista is about an hour.
Yeah. It's a drive. Yeah, Lake Balboa is nice. It's a nice area.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen. Okay, I do want to see the get into some of the stuff that you've been doing more recently. So one of the things earlier this last year, I guess it's already 2022, but earlier last year, I was talking to Ian again, and we were talking about him trying to venture into some NFT stuff back at the time, and a lot of people were getting into that. And then so I sort of was looking at some of his work, and then I stumbled on your work in the NFT market, and I was. You had done the series I saw was on all of the gods of crypto, right?
Right.
Is that what it was called? The series that you did?
It was a Cryptohistory.
The Cryptohistory. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's basically busts, I would say, of a bunch of key figures in the crypto world that you had done. And I was saying, first of all, if you are smart about selling stuff in the NFT market, especially towards those people that are into crypto, that is one of the smartest things you can do, is to put these guys on a pedestal, which you literally did. Right? Yeah. And you did that, and those sold really well, and they're actually great because they're not just the important people of the crypto world, but they're also, again, in that same style that you have, where you have a certain facial expression, a certain way and proportions to faces and eyes and et cetera that has your style. What motivated you to get into the NFT market? What was some of the things that you thought about that got you interested in that area?
Definitely. This one is a hard one to break it down because everything just kind of happened so fast, and it's still happening, right? I think when I first got introduced to the idea of doing something, it was when people was starting to put out some stuff, and I was just confused by it at first, and I think we all were, and mixing the physical aspect of it as well, and to me, I was into crypto before as investing. Kind of, I was at least looking at things, and I had some Ethereum from a year prior to it, it was a little up, but not nothing crazy. Anyways, so I was interested in crypto and in just understanding more about investment in general, because I got to a point where I was investing on different things, and obviously crypto is talked about. So it wasn't as new of a thing, I think, for me. When I got into I was thinking about an idea of what I could do with it, because for the past year, I was starting to do a lot more of the comic books, and I was trying to grow my social media with doing like daily sketches and putting it up. And I was able to grow my social media from 100K to like 700K in like, a year and a half. And I was into the mindset of like try to understand, like we talked about, like what people like, what people resonate with, like how does the social media thing work in general, to be able to grow myself. And I was selling classes at the time, like it was just for that reason of like getting more of more of a reach, right? So sorry, I'm went into a tangent just to
this is great. This is actually not a tangent, it's important.
It's important because when that actually happened to me, it clicked into what is people are actually looking for, because even with people, right, there's a certain hype that was created for the social media aspect of it. So NFT in general, right, the crypto space, there's a lot of different tangents of like people collect just because they either are very successful with crypto and then they like the art, they like to show off, they like to own something, right? There's the other tangent where people are investors, similar to when there's like different coins and people would buy the coin speculating that would go up. So you find those two groups where either is like this rich person that really appreciates the work and wants to have it and wants to display it, or you get the investor that are kind of looking for more of the speculation side of it, even though they like the art, but it's way more speculative. So to me, it was the same thing that I did on the game side of things, of like, how do I actually get some exposure in this industry, because it's new for everybody, not just because I have all these followers that immediately I will be, people will just, buy my stuff, right? So to me, it was like, how do I appeal to this community? And it was, how do create these important figures that I can mix the art style that I know I could execute on, and I can put something out there. So initially, it wasn't necessarily for I want to make millions of dollars and I want to bank on this series. It's just more, how can I reach out and get visibility I was fortunate enough that some of the first pieces that I sold, some high, kind of popular collectors that start buying my stuff, right? And then that got some hype, and since then it was just up to me to like how do I pivot now to do my own stuff. And I've been slowly transitioned into bringing my own style into things and start to kind of show people that I can do certain things. And so this past year it's been a lot of I feel like a very specific plan that I set up to transition into the things that I wanted to do, because I knew that if I go in with doing like my just popular stuff with my style, that's not what this market wants to buy or wants to invest on. You kind of have to slowly transition into kind of that the style, if you could
so basically you took what you learned from the social media growth that you had, where you developed a following based on seeing what people responded to, and then you identified the crypto market, said this is what they respond to, then it grew your crypto popularity and allowed you to transition back to what you wanted to do originally. I think and the reason why Beeple is so popular, right, at least part of the reason, is because he does things that are relevant to the community, right? Like it does a lot of that, and it's not so much about the art itself. Obviously the art is something that is part of it, but it's just how he can be a part of that community. So it's very rare that you find someone like X Copy is a good example, where he has a certain style but he speaks to that community, and it's just more, there's art and there is that appeal, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the things that we do as a CG artist, especially on the character side of things, is very rare or very hard to do something to do both. Like either do something that's beautiful, or like Ian, right? Like it's the craft is impeccable, right? And it's just he's a master of that. But how do you then appeal to a certain different market where it is more about the relevancy, right, of the work? Mm-hmm. Not just the one piece, but more of like how do you create a body of work where it speaks to more of a collection? That's a big part of it, because if someone will buy one piece from you, like he needs to understand that you're going to make more and you're going to appeal to more collectors, and you're going to grow this collector base to make sure his work is becomes valuable in the future, right? Because you're not just doing a one-off and you back to doing movie stuff, right? Like then I'll just have your work, and if I'm not one of those guys that I just want to have your work because of who you are, then it's just kind of you're just rugging the person basically. So it that's why it's complicated and it's new. And I think for the people who are involved in the collecting to begin with and understand what people are looking for, it's hard to come up with a plan of like, here's what I'm gonna do to make sure it's appealing to the community, I guess. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and to be honest, and how much I love Ian's work as an example, and used that. But Ian does have a story that he's telling, right? Yep. Which is a really good one. He's telling a story about history of art. He's telling a story about the friendship that he has with that person. So he does tell a story, which I think is really good. He goes beyond most CG artists, as you were kind of outlining before. They get really into the technology craft thing, and they don't think about the greater expression that they're trying to do. Yep. And when Ian started to put stuff on NFT market, I thought it was very interesting, but it wasn't as like. It's almost seemed like he seemed like a smarter marketer. Like a little Beeple is very good at marketing his stuff and understanding. I was like, oh, here's something. Oh, it makes sense what this is about. And when you did yours, it's like, people love this character. People love this person in the crypto world, right? And I'm going to show all of the, all the big crypto people out there, like Mark Cuban and all those guys. And they're like, that is someone they love. And I'm going to give that to them as an NFT. And that just makes sense. And understanding your audience is something that I think is fascinating to me in a lot of ways. What have you learned about that audience? What have you learned about the NFT audience that you think could be an interesting thing down the line, or where is it going in some ways?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there are different aspects, like I said, of that you have to be careful with, because it could be hard for the artists as well. That's why I keep, even when people wants to get into it, I want to make sure people understand what they're getting into it, because it's not just, if someone is actually investing in the work for either, for the speculative side of things, or they just want to have your work. If you're going into it because you want to make some money, you're gonna get frustrated, because it's not what this is about, right? It's something that, that goes for everything, but
sure,
especially with this, where I feel like a lot of people are getting into it because it's the money. It's about the money. If you haven't been doing works and trying to create a body of work in the past years, like a lot of people do, like if you're gonna start now, it's gonna be hard, because you need to, put out work very frequently and make sure you are feeding the community and building the community. I think the community is the big part of it, and something that people don't see a lot of the time, where, right. I actually build a Discord group where you can get, into certain channels if you have a piece, and we build community that way, and you can get rewards based on things that you collect. And, I'll reward people with certain NFTs if they sell it to a friend to build that community, and they get profits from it. It's just, there's a lot of
you are full on Web3, my friend.
Right? There are interesting mechanics that you can play with, where it is more you control resources, and if people are a part of that community, they either will get something from it, because that's what Web3 is about,
right.
or you just do it for the fun of like creating art and being a part of that, which is also a part of it, right? But to your point, like what I've learned about it is just like there are the two sides, and I think the people who are very wealthy and collect the work, and it's amazing that we even get the chance to have contact with certain those people, because before there was no like bridge, right? Like even if people, I've known a lot of people who were following my work for decades, and they are very successful. They want to be a part of my story, right? And they want to be collect something. They will have direct access to me. I would send them, metal frames, and I'll make, they actually appreciate the art. Obviously, that's a small percentage of what this market is. I think a lot of people are getting in and buying apes and those like avatar projects because they want to, make money. And I'm trying to stay away from those things and just focus on the people who are here for the art, appreciate the art, and want to collect. So that's the thing that I've learned. There are the two sides. I think people, I respect both, and I think there are people who actually are here for the speculative side of things, but they also appreciate the work and just want to be a part of what I'm building. So it's just more, I'm super thankful to have that, and I had that before with Instagram and social media, and then people appreciate the work. But now it's just there's a financial part of it, which was not possible before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the financial part, obviously, and then there's several things I want to talk about. But there's something let's talk about community first of all, because I didn't realize that you had built your own community, your Discord server, et cetera, right? And if you look at things like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? The Bored Ape Yacht Club is not about the ape.
Right.
It's about being part of that. It's a ticket into a special club.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a status thing.
It's a status thing, right? Yeah. So if you have the Bored Ape, you're it means something. And by the way, I don't know if most people know this, but Bored Ape Yacht Club actually means something. One is an ape is a slang word for someone who's buying into a new coin system. Yacht Club is someone in the crypto world who's made a ton of money and someone bored is like, I don't know what to do with all this money. So you get the Bored Ape Yacht Club. This actually means something. It's not just some silly goofy name. It is a silly goofy name, but it actually means something. And it sort of implies all these different people that are out there. So you get an idea of what this club is about, which is an interesting thing. Plus you have your Discord server, which is where these people congregate. I find that interesting. I think it's cool that you created your own club. Right? Yeah. You've created your own Discord server, you have your own community, and you built this around people who have a passion for your work, and they can profit from it in some ways, either through the value of the work or through the community that they're surrounded themselves by.
Right. Yeah, that's you hit on the nail there, and it is like even on the ape things where they started with, it's like that, like apes together strong, right? Like that was the thing where they kind of started with, and that's kind of with on the crypto side of things as well. And it's not that people are part of the community just because they they want to flip the work and make profit and all that. Like the people who will get into that, just because the way I'm building it, is the people who, are the good guys in the story, if you could say that, where people are helping each other, like looking at different projects, like not just on the NFT space. Like take that out of the question here. It's just more crypto in general, like different coins, different investments. There's that community aspect of it where I think the NFT and you being a part of that is almost, like you said, a ticket for you to belong in that community. And that makes it such an impact of just building connections, making connections. Like I've got to know so many different people, and where they're investors, just because this industry or the market in general, it is more of an investor mindset. Like I've got to know so many people that are involved on different things. I've invested on some things myself, like had different opportunities that I wouldn't have before. And I think the Discord side of things, where people are very happy to be there. I've heard like so many good things because people are just talking. Like there's when there's something interesting is in there. When I'm dropping something new, they will have first dips on acquiring something that's new from me. Obviously that's good for me, for obvious reasons, but sure, it's also good for them, because usually when I put something out there, the value is lower than the market would buy it from initially. So if they want to be a part of it, they would profit from it as well. I'm always dropping things in there where it's like, oh, here's something that's half of the market value, and they would buy in and resell it. So they are making profits, and then that's the only way for people to get in. So that's kind of how someone will buy something, they will get into the community. Now they're part of that. So it's definitely, like you said, like the Web3 is just a lot more, everybody's in control in a certain way. It's not just me, it's just this community is now raising my work because they're investors in a way, right? So it's almost like I have this group of people where they will go the extra mile to make sure my work is being seen, that I have some opportunities. I have so many different cases where people will bring me, oh, this gallery is doing something that I know the person, like, would you be interested? Because they are interested in my work doing well, because
if your work does well, their investment does well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is great.
It's a different mechanics that we had before, which is super interesting, right? And then not to say that's good or bad. I mean, there are good sides and bad sides about everything, but there's it's a different way of marketing, different way of internet, different way of art. Like that's why everything is new. I think we're all figuring it out. So it's very interesting.
So how many? I mean, you don't have to tell me if you don't know the number or whatever. But how many people do you have following you on your Discord server right now?
Right now, there's about 8,000 people in the Discord, and on the collectors group, there are like 350 collectors.
Okay.
Around that
number. Wow.
Which is funny. Like if you think about 350, if you talk about 700,000 on Instagram, is like such a small group.
No, but way more powerful.
Way more powerful, right? Like way more.
Yeah. Way more influence. One collector equals a whole lot of power. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing almost like monthly or weekly drops when I'll put something up there. It's like I've been doing pieces of like 100 copies. So 100 minted copies of the same image that I put it on my, to my collectors, and, they'll just sell immediately, because not just like most of these people are holding, because even some of the things that I'm doing, it's like, oh, if you have 2 of my pieces from the past, you get this one for free. So it's just more, I start rewarding the people who are being there for a long time. So it's just interesting for people to be a part of that, and it's almost like if you're here early, you're gonna make it, right? So it's just more, this is just that mentality, right? So it's a lot of cool mechanics that can be done. Yeah,
I mean, tell me a little bit about the mechanics, because I like the smart contracts are kind of interesting, because you can build in all kinds of incentives in the contracts, et cetera, for it to be attractive. So what have you learned about some of the mechanics of minting and smart contracts?
Well, it's very, very new. I think I've, started getting involved in some different groups, like Menfold. It's like one of the groups that are doing these kind of big collections, that they can actually, kind of edit the contract to do certain things. There are the burning mechanics where, you could either burn something to get something else, where it could also be written in the contract. And that's probably the one that's going to pick up the most this year. just because of there's a lot of work out there, and the more you mint, the more the scarcity just kind of goes away. So a lot of the things that you could do now is just, you've burned 2 of my works and you get something new, and at the same time these 2 works that got burned, the people who own that work, now it just becomes more valuable because there are less in the market, right? So there are things like that are very interesting. Like you could do merging 2 different contracts into one, which is also very interesting, right? If you have something from me, if you have an ape, I'll make a banana, you have an ape banana, and now you have the ape banana, right? Like just
right.
That kind of stuff is very interesting. So like I said, it's just different ways to do art, and I think it's that in itself, it's art as well, and it brings back to some of the game mechanics as well. It's just very something that I've kind of used to, and it's cool to think of my work that way, because I've done series in the past where I did like a Nintendo characters, for example, and I was doing one every couple of days. I'll do a different character. Towards the end of the character, when I post the character, there was like a mystery of like who's next, right? There was kind of like a social media gimmick thing I did a couple years ago. And that, people were like speculating, like, who's that? Or they comment, like, even if it's obvious, like, they would just comment. So it generate a lot of speculation and comments and all that. So doing certain things like that with NFTs, which is like, if you can guess who is next, then you buy a certain work, because I could do things that way where, if you own this piece, then you might get that one. So, people, then you see a lot of people buying that piece because they're speculating that they'll get something for free in a couple months. So yeah, it's very cool. It's a different way to go about the art. And a lot of those things is people who have no idea, which is the more impressive way, more exciting thing for me, because people got certain like a bad taste because of NFTs in the past year, of like with all the kind of the what is it, weather thing, and like the
carbon footprint,
the carbon footprint and all that stuff, and immediately a lot of people shut down that door. And obviously prices being crazy as they were, people were like, oh, this is like money laundering, blah blah blah, like all those things where it happens on the artwork, art in general, and people kind of shut that door. But there's so many things that are happening behind the scenes where all the things that I'm talking about here, and the ability for people to actually make businesses in a way where it is more, you're creating your own token in a way, right? And you control the supply, you control a lot of the different things. So you're doing that where people are part of that community, and there's a lot more things that can be done that I don't think we're kind of scratching the surface yet. A lot of the things that I'm doing is just because I know certain people and I'm able to kind of manipulate the contract in a certain way. It's not even like accessible to everyone to do that. But once that becomes accessible and people can realize that you can give away free tokens or a free access or a free membership, like the idea of Patreon, it's basically, it's what that is, right? The idea of Kickstarter.
It's a Patreon that you're investing in.
You're not, right? You're just giving without, receive. It's like a one-way street where you give something, you expect to receive something back. But imagine if you hold that and you could actually transfer it to someone in when if it becomes more valuable, if there are more people a part of that community, right? If there's a certain number of supply that there are different ways that you can go about it. Like same thing for Kickstarter, where it is the same thing. You're kind of investing in a project, and if it works, then you get the product back. But there are the difference to me with all these things is because you are using a platform and you're somewhat attached to what the platform is going to do. Like I use Gumroad, like I've sold a lot of courses in Gumroad, and I'm pretty much kind of a slave of the platform. Like they've changed so many things in the past couple years, fees and kind of annual things, and they change it. So once it becomes more available, like these platforms, and I think this is basically like you control like the token. Like you could do whatever you want with it because you know who has it. It's not attached to any platform. There are a lot of things that can be done once we detach from certain things, and also rewarding people. Sorry, I'm going like all over the place, but like
no, I listen. I find it fascinating.
And I don't want to sound like I'm selling anything here. It's just like,
I know. It's always been a problem when you start talking about anything in the Web3 or crypto world that you sound like you're trying to sell something, and it's a problem because I actually have been fascinated by this. A lot of people who listen to the podcast have been listening to this. I am I do believe that Web3 is actually for the greater good in a lot of ways, and that's just on a personal level. But I still feel that there's a lot of misunderstandings, both on the negative side and the positive side in terms of that, and people need to really take a step back and think about it. But do you feel that there is a lot of people that are criticizing Web3 that don't necessarily know everything about it? Like what's especially things like, for example, the carbon footprint of an NFT. Like how do you respond to that argument about that, for example?
Yeah. Well, I guess first of all, I don't have the full picture of. I think nobody does, right? Of like what the impacts are. But with that said, there are a lot of different coins and different networks that are doing something that are not. They're not going to impact anything. So I don't think people even look at that side of things, right? Where they would just look at Bitcoin or Ethereum and just be, that's going to destroy the planet. And it's not even looking at what the future looks like, where, there's E2.0 and a lot of things that are being worked on to solve that problem. Right. But I do think there are people who are talking, which is obviously that happens with everything, but they're talking about these things that they know what it is, but they don't necessarily do it. Like even Web3, right? Like when you're a part of a website, let's like SuperAir, for example, right? Like SuperAir is a platform where you sell 101s and you do all the art. It is basically like a 101 platform. And what they did basically is that they took the profit of the website, because they get 15% off sales, and they created a bank, right? They created a coin, and they gave away the coins to the users, right? Which is the investors, like all the users. Now imagine websites doing a similar thing where basically all the money that they make goes into the coin that goes into the user. So if the website does well, the community does well, if you're a user, you're gonna get money from it. And like I made a big amount, like a great amount of money just for being a part of that website, where people have no idea, where it's like, that makes no sense. Like, why would I use this thing? Like there's so many applications that can be used, because you are basically decentralizing the profits, right? And if basically how the website makes money is that the CEOs or the employees or whatever, they hold that coin. Sure. And if the coin does well, they'll make more money. So it's spread out between all. Obviously, there are goods and bads with a lot of these things, where people do fake pumps, and it's like you have to be careful where you get involved with. But I think the potential of the technology is amazing with what can be done in the future. And that's just the one case of like a successful case where it is more about, you're investing because there is something behind it. You're not just buying a coin like SHIB, right? If you're not just buying SHIB which is like, a lot of people bought SHIB, and it's like, there's nothing behind it. Like, why would I invest on something like that? No, but there's projects that are actually technology behind it and community behind it. Like, there are good things out there. So that's like one application of Web3. And like I've been involved on different things as well, where it is, it's a good product. And then they use the back end of Web3 to reward the users. Right. So,
I actually totally agree with that. I find it very interesting, the concept of decentralization, right? Because obviously, the best way, and I haven't been thinking about 2005, 2007, when Web 2 came about, like how this was going to change everything. And then like all of a sudden 2020, 22, 21, whatever, and I start looking back at Web 2 and I'm like, you know what it became? Because it was the promise of the community is going to build Web 2, right? But it became advertising. It's like all these big corporations profited from advertising, and that's just from doing that. So the decentralization of the internet is kind of the interesting thing. I find it fascinating that NFTs was just a mechanical thing, right? It was built around the idea of something that is non-fungible. And it was really started as an idea of contracts, almost like insurance, right?
Yep.
And then suddenly art, like that could be an NFT.
Right.
and then the entire art community became such an important part of Web3 out of completely unexpected. I think that was kind of an interesting thing. Do you think that there's a clash like between, the crypto world was, filled with crypto bros, right? And they weren't necessarily very artistic people in some ways. Well, how did they react when suddenly their world was invaded by art? What do you think about that? Because that happened like bam, like in a month. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
People did it really in a lot of ways. So
Yeah. No, it's funny. That definitely happened. And I still think there's a lot of people, even on the crypto space, who are like, this fucking NFT thing, it makes no sense, right? There's still a lot of people who wouldn't invest on it, but a lot of people are also using the art as a facade to the token, right? That's why, projects like, Bored Ape and like even the punks, right, are just more, you make a token, like anybody can make a token. And if you make one and you have, the images are just, the displayed version of the token. So there's also that side of things, and I think a lot of people invest on it that way as well, where, like I said, there are different ways of going about it. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think the NFT is just more of it's just a tool, right? Like you could do so many different things on it. You could just hold the art. It could just be a 101. There's no specific value to the token itself. It's just more, the token is attached to the art, and the values, right, is there. I think this year we'll start seeing a lot more interesting things done with the contract, and once that starts happening, I think it would change a lot of people's perspective on what can actually be done with it, right? So like you said, it is more of the smart contract that can hold anything, basically, if you can script on it, if you can write in a contract. Like I've done the drops that I've done with Christie's, for example.
You've worked with major auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's.
Yeah. So that was crazy last year. Like I had no idea that would ever be possible. So like here we are, right?
How many pieces have you sold through those auction houses?
It was one piece each. The Christie's was a 101. The Sotheby's one, there was a smart contract where the owner of that piece, basically that piece is split up into 7 different pieces after that. So if whoever bought one also got like almost like a breakdown of like 7. And there are different rewards for, like, if people hold 101s in certain collections, they will get a certain perk. And if that person has, a major perk because you basically have a lot of 101s. But basically, I guess the point of Christie's is that they were actually like writing a custom contract. So it wasn't just like, I'm going this website and I'll mint the work. No, it was like almost like, selling a house. I mean, the house is way more complicated, but it's like, when was it built? Like, what it's supposed to do? What's like everything about it, and everything that if the person decides to display, like, what's the requirement for displaying it? It was a lot of like everything is written in the contract for this person to know if they can sell it, if they can display it, if they can put it on galleries, because a lot of this is happening now where there's like NFT shows all over and they're starting to display the work, and which is that's awesome on itself, where it's just people who appreciate it, have galleries, they want to be a part of that community. They're just displaying digital works in physical galleries, which is awesome. Like museums, I was in a couple different museums last year where it was pretty cool. But basically it was like
that's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was right. Like it's completely shift on mentality, which is I wasn't expecting that would ever happen, but money talks. That's for sure.
I think it's amazing that digital art would never have gotten the recognition that it does now, that you guys are being shown in galleries, that would never have happened if it wasn't for that shift that happened, right? Yeah. Like major gallery houses displaying the work, and I feel like we're just getting started, because now people are looking for ways to display it, right? Like we haven't had a lot of investments on that side of things for a long time. Like Samsung is coming out with TVs now that you can rotate 90 degrees to display the work vertically, and that's like an actual product that's coming out, and it's like that's awesome. Like I've never thought that would that we will see that. Companies, like I had a meeting this morning about a company that's investing on different things, and they're talking to the artists, like, when would that ever happen where it's like, I'm interested in your community, we're putting this product out, like I want you to create something for us. And it's just more like you put your name out there because you control, like I keep saying, you control the resources, and it's like that wasn't possible before. So it's an interesting shift. I think, again, I'm not trying to sell anything here. I don't have to sell anything at this point, but like I'm trying to show people where
if you've invested on your work, if you like this kind of stuff, and you invest in community as well, like even if you don't have a following, like I think do it for the art. I think it's more than just I'll go in to make a quick buck, and it's like crypto is a lot of money. It's like no, there's an actual opportunity to do something cool. Like I'm going now, like using some of the kind of the sales from last year and like building like a statue line, and I just I'm kind of building a collector base where
right.
I can do more things that I would have to invest my own money before. So it's pretty cool.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you're saying all these things, because I think people need to sort of see some of the potential in some of this stuff. And again, I don't necessarily think that people should just go away and throw away everything and start making NFTs, because that's not how it starts. It starts with a community that you have to build over years and years that you've already been doing. So that's a really cool thing.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Okay. A couple last questions before we go here. Okay. So I have, I think people have been asking this question. It's kind of a stupid question, but I think it's a relevant one. What is your definition of the metaverse in some ways? And think about how does your work live inside of that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a great question, because I feel like there's a lot of hype now with the word metaverse, right?
Yep.
And people just have to be careful with what they take out of it. Like I think we live in a metaverse for a few years now, or I see it in my kids where they are in iPads and Roblox, like it's just nonstop, and it's like that's basically what it is. Like you're just living in that little universe, and we've done that throughout the years with like The Sims and like all these like Second Life. Like we've been through phases where it's like, oh, this is it. Like we're going into the metaverse, and it's always been that kind of hype. And I think, especially with COVID and everything, and then you see these big companies now with crypto having the opportunity of doing digital money, that it's a little more achievable now, and you get a certain types of generations being interested in. And I think we are going to go into more of a integration phase where everything is going to start talking to each other. Because I think before it was always like, oh, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And I think the beauty of blockchain is because everybody could live into that ecosystem where nobody owns it, right? So if you have a certain information, everybody could pull from that. So it's just that allows from bunch of things, especially in the gaming, right? Like if you go into, and I can see things with like Ubisoft like doing the NFT things and wasn't successful, just because I think it's how you approach it, how you're explaining that data. If you go in with like, I'm just going to sell all these NFTs, that's not the right way to go about it. It's just more, if we are using all this data and it lives on the blockchain, what can we build from that? And I think I've seen a lot of companies investing on how you display that information. Like, let's say I watch Disney Plus tonight, and that information can get populated like to my collectors. It's like, hey, if you're a fan of Star Wars, you have access to this thing that I created. And like, I could never done that before, but now I can have a certain certainty that you've done something that's not connected to any sort of platform. And I think that's the beauty of what blockchain will make it accessible for metaverses.
Right.
And once that starts happening, I think we are going to start living in a world that's a little more free in a way, right? Like the information is just going to be accessible to whoever wants to build on it, not just like, oh, Facebook controls everything and has all the data, right?
So basically, as long as there's no walled gardens, right? Like the walled garden is the opposite of the metaverse in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what's scary about Facebook, right? When they brand themselves as like Meta, and they want to control that information. Is like, that's a little scary because that goes against what people are trying to build. So I feel like that's what metaverse to me will mean in the future. Not like we're not gonna live inside a VR headset, right? It's just more we're gonna all be connected in a way.
Yeah, my battery went out on my camera, but that's okay. We'll manage that. But okay, well that's fast. You
got into the matrix, like you speaking too many meta words.
Yeah. I realized like, oh crap,
they cancel
went
you.
off battery. No, but listen, this is really great. I think it's really interesting that what's happening in the metaverse. I think it's really interesting that you said what you did about the definition of what it is, because I think its undefinition is actually kind of more interesting in some ways. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating. Well, listen, this has been really great. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about it. You gave me even more than I expected in terms of all the excitement of what you're doing out there. I think congratulations, by the way, on figuring it out, like figuring out something that's really interesting and sort of sticking to your style and your art in that way. So it's really, really kind of awesome.
Thank you, Chris. So, like again, I don't want to sell. I know I went to this kind of the meta kind of tangent here, but I don't want to sound like I'm selling anything. To me, I've always looked at things that are interesting enough that I know I could build on top of it. Like, same thing, like Patreon was one thing, like Gumroad's another thing. I've always been Instagram, right? Like I've never been scared to try to build stuff on it. It's just more how can I use the tool and to my own work, and always focusing on my own work. I've never, like, you're not gonna see me doing all these avatar projects because I want to make like millions of dollars. Like that's not what this is about. It's just more how can I just always keep up, and like we talked about in the beginning, like how can you keep up with technology and how you can build art on top of that. I think it's always been the challenge for all of us to first keep up with all the softwares and the cool things that this industry can do, and then how do you make cool stuff, because the software can really do the work. You have to be the one behind it, putting it putting it to work and making cool stuff. So I think this is kind of the phase that we're living in now. Like who knows where this is going to go in the future, and again, I'm trying to show some of the things that at least I've been doing. Like hopefully, I know there's some friends that are doing the same thing and being very successful with it. And I think a lot more people, because we hold the talent. Like this industry is like, I see people complaining about, all these things are selling. They're kind of, they're not good. It's like, dude, if you're saying that, like you have the control to make something good. So why not go at it and then try to make something out of it? So I hope, people at least look at it and do not get blocked by the fact that it might be something that kind of threw you off at the beginning.
And sort of, I think that people need to examine the communities that are out there, right? And if you're able to, instead of Instagram getting all the advertising dollars for your likes, why not just basically take what you've done and give it to the community, and the community can profit from it themselves.
And they get scared by it as well, right? Like you see when TikTok came out, like they start rewarding the people with money for views. Now Instagram started doing that. So it's always like we slowly start shifting that mindset where the creators are what matter for these platforms, and if not, they're just gonna go somewhere else. And I think with Web3, we're gonna start seeing some things where it is gonna shift some things around. So I'm looking forward.
I've switched to the Brave browser, so let's just put it that way.
Nice.
All right. Well, cool, Raf. Thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate it, man. Anytime.